Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spiritual Cake Podcast. We talk about anything and everything that has to do with that spiritual side of our existence. You're familiar with the physical and the mental and the emotional. We have been discussing the spiritual, whatever that is. My name is Clint Upton. With me is Wendy Dahl. Wendy?
Hi, Clint.
Hello, Wendy. If you're joining us for the first time, you should know that neither Wendy nor I run any kind of a religious organization, nor has our formal education been along those lines. We were both raised relatively conservative Christian. Wendy is Mormon. I was raised Lutheran, but have since explored a lot of different theologies and philosophies. Plus, we are both in the event industry with an international clientele, and that has exposed us to a lot of different customs and traditions and rituals. And we bring all of that into this conversation. And that's exactly what it is. It's a conversation. And if you want to join the conversation, then at the end of this episode, we will tell you how to do that. Wendy, do you remember when I told you about the book Journey of Souls?
Yes.
Okay, so I looked that up. I went to the third member of our podcast, which is ChatGPT. Those of you who are unfamiliar with Journey of Souls, well, we're going to show you the book cover, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what it contains. All right, so these are the book covers. It's been out for a while. It was published in 94, so it's probably have different iterations. And so the guy who wrote it, Michael Newton, he's a doctor, PhD. He's a hypnotist, probably along with some other stuff that he's done, but he's a hypnotist. And so the idea is that he has these clients, puts them under hypnosis, and then they are able to they relive their birth, and then they started talking about what happened before they were born in this life. And that's what gave the genesis of this book, Journey of Souls. Are you with me so far?
Yep.
It presents case studies, and we're going to get to a couple of those in a second. But here's the main concept. The soul continues. It was there before, and it's here, and then it continues after, which I think is kind of what Mormons believe. Is that true?
No. Well, yes. Sorry. I'm thinking incarnated. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the word incarnate and that was where I was headed. But no, what you were saying is that, yes, there's a pre-life, your life here on the earth, and then an afterlife.
Right. And we're talking about consciousness. I guess some people would think that there's some other type of a body. If we lived then this body, now this body, now that body, and that would probably be reincarnation is what you're thinking about. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not that. It's the consciousness, or some people call it your spirit. Do you think consciousness is the same as your spirit?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's almost like the same thing as a higher power and God. It's just two different terms for essentially the same thing.
Okay, that's cool. You know, what's interesting about that is that we always associate the functions of our consciousness as being part of what the brain does. And obviously, when you die, then your brain is with your body and your brain is no longer functioning. But yet we're saying that there's a consciousness that is in tandem with the brain, something along those lines, but it pre-existed and it comes into what's fascinating about that? We start as an infant, and even though we have a consciousness, we have to learn how to be a human being. I never said that before. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. We don't start out as adults, thank goodness. Or that we can talk in full sentences. Could you imagine a baby doing that?
There's a lot of AI stuff going on right now on
Oh,
social
yeah.
media. It's so funny. It's really
Yeah.
funny. Well, anyway, I think that that's a distinction that is important, that we have a consciousness, but we don't know how to be a human being. Because I think we've already acknowledged that human beings try to kind of shove God into a human explanation. It's pretty obvious that God is way more than just whatever we can imagine. All right, so I think consciousness could also fall under that kind of guideline. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
The idea is that your soul or your consciousness has been and will continue. And now, what he says in his book is that there are soul groups, souls that you keep incarnating or whatever. Sorry if that word is kind of like a sticking point for you. But anyway, the idea is that the souls kind of stick together, which is why you may come across somebody and they look really familiar or something along those lines, is what I'm guessing. There's guides and teachers. And so, life purpose and planning. It's suggesting that souls choose major life themes that they're supposed to accomplish in this life, key relationships that they want to continue or generate, the challenges that they have to face in order to grow their purpose for this life, which kind of makes sense to me. The way that we're so individual, our physicality, the chemistry of our brains, and there's such a diversity of humankind. It struck me just like a couple of weeks ago. I was someplace where there was a lot of people. I don't know if it was Costco or someplace. And I was marveling at the diversity of humanity. I mean, each one of them has their own little universe. And we've talked about, in terms of religions and the diversity of the spiritual experience. But It really is staggering when you think about the diversity of humans. And all of that comes into play in regards to the spiritual journey of each individual. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. So, what the book posits is that the spirit or your consciousness, the common things are it leaves the body. And then once it leaves the body, there's a feeling of lightness and relief, which makes total sense to me. When I do memorial services as an officiant, one of the things that I say is I don't know exactly how the universe works, but I am of the opinion that we are more than just our body. And now the person that we're honoring is no longer burdened by that and anything that they were going through in their body. Now they're completely free. So the idea that there would be a feeling of relief and lightness makes total sense to me. The other thing that is fascinating is that when they leave the body, they're met by guides or familiar souls. In the Christian world, we're often told that when we die, you get to see grandma again or something like that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Do they say that, or is that like a common thing in the Mormon church?
Yeah.
So you're going to see them. So they're okay. So this is all kind of following the same pattern. You review your life and then your re-entry into the spiritual community. When I was studying yoga, and I don't know if this was Hindu religion or theology specifically, but there was a song that we sang in the yoga center that was, I am the bubble, make me the sea. In other words, there was like an immersion the same way that a drop or a bubble would dissolve into the great ocean of consciousness. That's why the reentry into a spiritual community, it's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the people that read the books, well, obviously there's a lot of curiosity. And I also think that people read this book for comfort because of their fear of death. And if they have these real life testimonials from people under hypnosis, that there is something beyond just the physical life, that can be very comforting and kind of ease the fear of death. That's my opinion, why people would go to this. So then I said, well, give me some examples. There's a story about returning home, the post-death arrival. Many subjects describe dying, leaving the body, moving through darkness or a tunnel, then arriving in a bright, calm space where familiar souls greet them. I think the word calm is critical because death can be terrifying. I mean, we've seen people that are on their last breaths, and for some of them, if they don't see the light, there's a look of terror on their face. My sister passed away when she was 46 years old, and I remember that look on her face. You know, she was in the hospital heading down the home stretch. And I wasn't there when she actually passed. My mom was. So I have no idea what that was like for her. But I do know that when she was in the hospital, she was scared. And
Interesting.
so it makes sense when you go beyond, your soul moves on, that you're in a calm environment. Boy, that sounds really nice. So it reinforces that you're not alone when you die, matches near death experience themes people already know, and emotionally comforting. There you go. Just said that. So the other one is life review without judgment. Oh, we're so used to that in the Christian environment. Isn't there some like a level of placement in the afterlife? The LDS, Latter-day Saints community, there is a placement process for the afterlife. Is that true or no?
Yes. And it's based on the choices and the way that you lived your life.
Right. According to what guidelines? According to what the LDS community says are the guidelines for a good life? What's the criteria?
It's a good question. I'm trying to remember if it's the Doctrine and Covenants in the LDS Church. There are three degrees of glory: the celestial kingdom, the terrestrial kingdom, and the telestial kingdom. How you reach each kingdom is, I mean, they talk about it in the scriptures where it's essentially the way that you live places you in a certain kingdom. Like, for instance, if you go and commit murder, definitely not going to the celestial kingdom because that's where God lives. But if you're doing everything that you can do to live a good life and be a good person and evolve into a good person while you're here, then you go to the celestial kingdom. Is there anything else you wanted to know about that?
No, that's good. That's good to break that down like that. That's cool. Why this book gets quoted a lot in regards to the life review, because it shifts morality from punishment to learning. I like that. Strong emotional storytelling. People feel others' joy or pain that they caused. Oh, I think that's part of the 12-step program. If you have an addiction, I think making amends with the people that you feel that you've harmed, own up to it and go to them. Not that they're necessarily going to give you forgiveness, but at least you take responsibility for what you've done, which it
Right.
sounds to me like this is kind of similar to that.
Yep.
It gets referenced in spiritual and therapy circles. Oh, the journey of souls. Probably not every spiritual circle. I think we should probably designate that. There's a lot of organized religions where this was kind of threatened their foundation. You get to choose your next life, the pre-birth planning. I've heard that said so many times, like, why did we choose our parents? Why did we choose this life? And I guess it all goes back to what do you need to learn in your evolution as a soul. You meet guides and sometimes soul groups to plan on major challenges you have to do in the life you're about to live, the key relationships you want to keep or evolve, and general life themes. So that's kind of neat. Have you ever thought about that in regards, like if you had to do it all over again, like what kind of life you would want to live in order to learn certain things that would give you personal growth? I mean, it's hard to do that as a human being because, we're limited to our own brain and thought
Right.
processes. But I've never thought of that before. I've never thought about what would I do differently. See, I think I don't want to relive anything. I don't want to change anything because everything led to meeting my wife and having my children. So I don't want to change any of that because I don't want them to just disappear like in the movies. But it is an interesting thing to think if I were going to start over again, where would I want to live? What would I want to experience? And the thing that's difficult is most of us don't want to put challenges in our way because struggling is not pleasant. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. Although, it's interesting. We were talking about struggling before we pushed record today. And I feel like even through the struggles, like you're getting refined the whole time. And the people around you that are engaging with you during your struggle are also growing too. And I feel like our greatest times of growth are actually during struggles.
Oh, yeah. The Buddhists say that suffering is part of life.
Mm.
And there's a way to handle the suffering, and suffering can be interpreted many different ways. In a past episode a long time ago, we talked about how suffering could just be not getting what you want. Obviously there's different levels to that. That's
Hmm.
interesting, to plan a life where you want to have obstacles that you have to overcome. There was a book written by a guy who was immersed in the Stoics. The title of the book was The Obstacle is the Way. That,
Hmm.
when something gets in your way, the best thing you can do is face it head on and go through it in order to get out the other side and learn what you're supposed to learn. So this is kind of like I guess, a version of that in regards to planning the life that you need to live next, that sort of thing. The thing that's interesting about the book is that there's multiple stories that seem to repeat these basic themes. So I said, well, give me a specific case example. And it said, the reluctant return soul subject who didn't want to reincarnate. One subject described dying after a difficult life and returning to the spiritual realm feeling exhausted. They reported meeting a guide who helped them review the life, not with criticism, but with curiosity about what was learned. And the subject said they were hesitant to go back to Earth, but eventually agreed to another life after seeing how unfinished lessons could help other souls too, not just themselves. Oh, that's interesting.
Very.
To help other people. That's fascinating because we think of it as so individualistic. I'm on my path and my journey and
Hmm.
that sort of thing. That's why a lot of people, social media has given people a platform to where they can share their struggles in the hopes that it will help somebody else. I think that's the underlying motivation besides just having an audience or whatever, but sharing it seems, and I keep hearing that theme over and over and over again, when a celebrity or somebody will share their struggles, if they have some sort of a media platform, whether it be podcasts or radio or TV or anything else, and it seems to help people. They don't
Hmm.
know who, and some people may reject it, but there are people that are out there that just have the comfort of, I'm not alone, and somebody else is going through this or has been through this, so that maybe there is hope for me and whatever I'm dealing with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the idea that if this is true, that the souls discuss the need to go through certain struggles or learn certain lessons through struggle, that you're not only helping yourself grow, but you also are helping other people that may be on a similar path. I like that a lot. That feels really good to me. Reincarnation is optional. It's a discussion. It's not forced. Earth is advanced training. Some would argue with that, and emphasizes growth through challenge. This is so cool. And it keeps going on to tell stories and all that kind of stuff. And once again, I'm going to go back to the book. This is the book covers, and it's in Amazon or any place else. You probably could find it in libraries. It is a fascinating concept. The thing that is important to note, it's hypnosis, which isn't always recognized as scientific validation. Does that make sense?
Hypnos isn't always validated as scientific.
Let me say that a different way. So the stories that people tell while they're under hypnosis,
Yes.
not every scientific community acknowledges that as scientific proof. I mean,
Oh,
we are
I
talking
see.
about spirits and things like that, and
Yeah.
hypnosis, and who knows how deeply you are under hypnosis, or if you're just your mind is creating things under hypnosis, that sort of thing. Having said that, I guess anybody who gets curious about this and wants to journey, interesting choice of words, who wants to
Yes.
journey into this book, then they go into it with whatever the criteria is. But I'm hoping curiosity is one of them. Take it with a grain of salt, that sort of thing. Do you have anything else you want to say about this?
Well, I always think that this is fascinating because I feel like there's so many similarities, yet such vast differences between each group, like spiritual groups' beliefs in this. And I know that you and I have, it's not necessarily that we've joked about it, but I feel like, we've talked about how after we die, it's going to be like, so that's the way it was
Yes.
supposed to be, or that's what it meant, you know? We'll be like, aha. So, so yeah, I feel like, knowing all the differences is important and part of, your own spiritual journey to be able to differentiate and decide what you believe.
Right. And I think the goal of spiritual beliefs and that sort of thing is to add comfort and joy, one would
Yes.
hope, and comfort and joy
Yes.
to this life. I think
Uh-huh.
that's what this is all about. It's about this life. And if
Yep.
you want to live in anticipation of the next life, then you're still doing things in this life, and hopefully they bring you joy and peace. That's what I'm hoping for. All
Yes.
right, Wendy, tell everybody how they get in touch with us.
You can find us at spiritualcake.com where you can go back and listen to or read any of our previous episodes. You can click one of the two social media icons and join us on Facebook or Instagram, or you can send us a message requesting a topic or even to join the conversation.
Absolutely. And when you do join the conversation, please know we welcome you with open arms. That's it for this episode of the Spiritual Cake Podcast. This is Clint, and on behalf of Wendy, we will see you next time.